that kind of triggered something in me to say, hey, there's different elements in life. There's different parts of maybe even yourself that you haven't explored yet. And so I started to pay attention to more of these creatives, and that kind of sparked, well, what does life after college look like for me? And that was a 2-year question.
We love the San Gabriel Valley. There are some amazing people and businesses here, and we think they deserve the spotlight. Welcome to the SGV Master Key Podcast. We'll have on the people that make the SGV great. We'll find out what makes them tick, their ups and downs, their history, and we're going to have fun doing it. This is the SGV Master Key Podcast. And now your hosts, Scott Warmuth and Russell Mano.
All right, SGVers, welcome back to another episode of the SGV Master Key Podcast. If you're new here, welcome. We take a deep dive into the lives and learn about the people that make up this great community. If you're a regular to this show, welcome back. Sit back and get ready for another episode here. Scott, before the show, as always, we sort of discuss a lead-in into the guests here. And, we were talking about playing board games. And, I don't know at what generation that sort of stops, but I have a feeling like it dies down a little.
As you get older?
Yeah, I think so.
But we continue, even in my family, we play card games, board games. It's a great, in fact, I think more than anything else, we spend time doing that.
Sure.
When my kids come back to Pasadena.
I love it. I remember playing games, various board games and card games. And then at a certain point, it just sort of stopped. And Victoria, our podcast manager here, I would play games with their family, and I just got reminded of like how it brings people together and conversation and jokes and laughter. Yeah. And there's something, you can't get that in, let's say like a phone game or something, or even just watching something on TV.
No, it's a personal, social event.
Sure.
Family event.
Yeah.
Or friendship.
Well, before we go into our guests, I just want to remind our listening audience that we have partnered with San Gabriel Valley Now, your source for city news, announcements, events, special savings, and everything SGV. Check them out on Instagram, sgv.now, and read their new SGV Now magazine on their website, sgvnow.com. Well, I'm excited to learn about our guest today and what he's created. His name is Brian Taylor, entrepreneur, game developer, and knight, I believe you said, right? So Brian,
I believe he's a knight of the fallen shield or something.
Okay,
I don't know.
I'll take it.
Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And we also have a returning guest here, Brandon. Welcome to the show too.
Hey, you all know me from the last one. Same deal, same mess, different day.
Yeah.
Well, Brandon Rogers and Brian Taylor are together here. Their pronoun is we.
Only when we're together it is we. We used to always have presentations of everything we worked very hard on, right in this room, right there.
Almost right where you're sitting.
That's true.
They both worked together here at our office, going back about probably starting 2013, I would think.
I think so.
Wow.
2013.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
We there's so many projects we did where I don't remember even the context of why we did certain things, but I just remember the weird photos and footage we got out of it. I'm like, why were we taking prom photos? I don't know. It was for something we were trying to sell.
I'm still trying to remember though the name of the remember the food critic that
Clarissa.
Was it Clarissa?
Way.
Yes.
Clarissa Way.
Yep.
Oh, thank you. That was it. Yes.
Yep.
Oh, great. That was a name I've been trying to remember for like years because she developed into quite a prominent writer, a food critic and food writer the years. Yep. Do you remember, Brandon? Clarissa Way?
I remember that was around the same time we were working with that Green Zone. So we were doing a lot of food stuff, I feel like.
Yeah, right.
But the food reviewer, what was our deal with her? What was she?
We did a food tour of the San Gabriel Valley.
That's right. How did that serve us? How do
Well,
Customer retention.
well, you got some free food, didn't you?
Hey, that was well, I mean, we got free food left and right here, everywhere we went.
Yeah,
I don't say
right.
we think we never needed to stock our fridges.
No, we did have a regular infusion of good food, didn't we?
The break room was always it was well stocked. Moon cakes
Spicy
and
food too.
yeah, spicy. Yeah.
Yeah, we just went through a phase that ended a few months ago where there was a lot of Portos.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Portos. Regina got me hooked on that.
Yeah.
Portos. That was a go-to when we'd order for events.
Yeah.
If we had a meeting, let's get Portos. I think that's what we put. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. That is spot on. That's funny.
Wow.
Portos in water bottle.
Wow, that's really good.
We love you, Regina.
I love Regina so much. She's been stuck in my head. Like I can still hear and see her. Like it's been what 5-6 years something. And she had such a distinct, palpable personality.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
And Tammy too.
Well,
That was a different flavor, but very palpable.
Now, are these nightmares that you're having, or?
Well, it depends.
That would be.
Hey, I would love it. I would love it if you could do Tammy. But
Brian,
you could do
wanna take a
Regina.
whack at that? I don't know if I can.
Tammy. Okay.
Tammy Wong, let's hear it. She, you know what? I was never on the business end of her gun. I don't think you were either.
No,
we were always on good terms
the
with her.
business end of her gun. Yeah, I was on the business end of her gun.
If anyone was on the business end of her gun, we could, because we worked right outside your office.
We would hear it.
We could hear, she's not happy at this person today.
Yeah. Well, Tammy is now remote. So.
Oh my gosh! Wow. So who's in her throne room at the?
Well, actually, Jeff has.
Oh, he's okay.
Jeff is mostly in that room now, that office.
When every now and then I used to, I don't know why I would sit at her desk.
Just to feel the
Just to feel the power.
Yeah.
But I think well, she did let me work there from time to time, and I will I can say it now safely. I would go through, snacks. She had snacks in her drawer. And I'd be like, another day at Tammy's. What have we got here?
Yo.
So you're the one. I always got the blame for that. Okay. Now,
Tammy has a definite power energy to her.
Oh,
well,
and it's packaged in a tiny little thing. That's lightning in a bottle, Tammy.
Yeah, if you drive down to 605 and you see her on the billboard, guaranteed you'll be like doing 95 and exit later.
I'm so happy to see Anita here. There's something very nostalgic about walking in and having Anita, seeing it, because the face comes with the atmosphere. I'm like, it's like home, coming back to. Although I can't shake the feeling of walking up the stairs and being like, oh shit, I'm late to.
or needing a cigarette.
I was just telling Liam when we were outside, I'm like, all the cigarettes we smoked in this stairwell. That it made me want one walking up those steps. I'm like, oh, I used to smoke here. Oh my god!
I know. Now you can't smoke anywhere.
Now you can't. Now no one does smoke anywhere.
2013 to now.
It's all about vape. All vape, no sleep.
I know. It's not as cool though with the vape.
Yeah, there's something. James Dean is turning in his grave every time someone hits a vape.
But I have noticed you vaping though.
Yeah, I do. It
is convenient though, right?
I do it mainly to look cool. No. But damn, yeah, things have changed a lot since we've been here. Although I think the businesses are still the same. When we were walking downstairs, I noticed the bakery is still here.
Right, the bakery, the dentist next door, who never comes to work.
I think it's a front.
It's a front. They're laundering. They're not just cleaning teeth. They're washing money too.
Yeah, the businesses. There's still. I don't know if it's a spa, massage parlor, or what at the end of the hallway there.
Oh yeah.
Where you never see anybody.
Yeah.
Also,
Right.
where unless it's like 7 at night. Do you remember when we'd work and there would be people coming in and out of there, and the person would lock the door behind them?
Appointment only.
And then we found that passageway between this office and that place.
This is true.
We're like, oh, and it right
And
up
that
to Scott's
wasn't
office.
from Tammy's
It
office
wasn't
either.
from Tammy's. It didn't go to Tammy's. That was your bookcase that swiveled.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh! But yeah, I
Wow.
remember we used to we turned that other suite into a studio years ago.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And now it's our office.
Oh.
Yeah,
wow.
we're actually using that space.
Okay.
That's a good size. It's like a conference room, a private office, and then the common area in the bathroom, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's quite a bit of room in there.
Okay.
You could do quite a bit of legal damage in that room.
Quite a lot of legal finagling
Legal
there.
finagling. Oh, you know, I do have to head out here in a sec, but
Reverend Brandon has to...
Reverend Brandon, I'm going to marry a couple.
Oh really?
Well,
fucking
he's not going
Virginia.
to marry them.
Yeah, we're not
but-
doing a throuple thing.
I was gonna say
At least not during the
TV.
ceremony. But no, I'm gonna go commemorate two friends of mine together, and who knows?
Oh, there we go. So Liam's security in the
You're
back.
giving them the imprimatur. You can look up that word later.
The imprimatur.
Yes,
Imprimatur.
imprimatur.
Is that
To engage in whatever kind of activity. they
right
want.
before they say I do, so it's all kosher. Hey, you were still single. All right, well, guys, thank you so
Yeah.
much for having me.
Well,
Sorry it
thank
was
you.
short, but I appreciate you having me here.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
man.
And
Thanks
now
for
we
coming
can
on.
dig into the meat of
Now,
the show.
Yeah.
cut into it, right? All right.
Good.
Thank you, Brandon.
Good seeing you.
Thank you.
See you guys.
All right. Well, that was that was a big tangent for our regular listeners. They're probably like, "What the heck is this going on?" But hopefully, also very entertaining as it was for us here. But this show is to highlight the people here. And Brian, we're lucky to have you here. Can you share with the listeners what is your connection to the San Gabriel Valley?
Oh, actually, I would say my connection is this law office, honestly. I had just moved to Pasadena not too long before I started working for Scott. And actually working at the law office is where I really discovered what the city, what the community had to offer. And so just kind of fell in love with the place and ended up staying. Back then we were going to Green Zone, like just doing all these different things around San Gabriel Valley, extending our hands into different businesses and things like that. And so just really learning the culture, just being somewhere completely different from LA, but in LA, it was amazing. So I have an affinity for the San Gabriel Valley.
I
for
think
sure.
you had just actually moved from out of state.
Yeah, so I moved from Atlanta, Georgia. I was
Yeah.
in the smack dab of LA for maybe 6 months, and I was like, I need a different vibe, Still a country boy at heart, and so
Yeah.
came out to Pasadena. I was like, okay, this seems like a different speed, and then, but of course, all my friends still lived in LA. But working here, just went to so many different places that I started to really like it. I became almost an ambassador where I'm like, hey, you need to come hang out with me. Actually, look at all these things. Let's go eat. Look, the food is amazing. The people are great. It's a real city.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's parking. So my connection to the San Gabriel Valley it's really started with this office. Really started at law firm.
When you say you're from Atlanta, Georgia, is that like when I'm, in a different state and I say I'm from LA because they don't really know the smaller towns outside, or are you actually from
So
Atlanta?
I'm actually from Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
My parents are from out of state. So they're from New Jersey and Ohio. And so when you move to another state, especially in the South, you stay in the city. And so they, thought Southerners were slow. And so they didn't go outside the bubble of Atlanta.
Okay.
So I grew up actually in the city of Atlanta. Yeah.
What was life like for you growing up there?
It was simple. It was very different from the Atlanta that you see on TV now. But I mean, you got to imagine it's the Bible Belt. It's conservative. We're in the South, so it's slow. So just all those things mixed in with having a good sports team at the time. So Atlanta Braves.
That was the 90s.
That was so it was
The great pitching, huh?
Great pitching. Then you had the Olympics. It was really a kind of a precursor of the city developing and getting all of these amazing events and having budding businesses, but without full-on infiltration from transients from other states. So it was kind of a time where the city was really still true to its DNA, I would say, and it hadn't fully evolved into this big metropolis that people know it as today. So it was good. It was very, it was a unique time, I think. I don't think it'll ever get back to that space.
Yeah, Atlanta, actually starting in about the 70s, was developing into this kind of super city type of thing. And then President Carter came from the area, not from Atlanta, but
from Georgia, yeah.
And just, I just remember seeing like Time magazine, you know, Atlanta on the cover. It was like the super city of the future. Is how it was being presented and how it was developing. Yeah. But it really did develop into that, didn't it?
It did. It took a while to get there, but it was a healthy pace, I think, because a lot of people born and raised there really got to be a part of that experience. You know, typically things happen so fast, you kind of wonder what happened, but we got to see it develop, and we get to see it change, and the stadiums move and the buildings come up, and then the Olympics, and then you're there afterwards to see how some buildings go to the colleges, some buildings go to different businesses. But yeah, it was a really good time, special time in the city, I would say. So I grew up in a very happy Atlanta.
Oh yeah, good.
Yeah, it was cool.
Was there a catalyst for you that got you to come out here to California?
Actually, yes. So I was in my senior year of college. I went to Georgia State University, and I was doing a marketing internship at a record label. And mind you, I'm, again, growing up in traditional Southern Bible Belt, Georgia, but I decided to do a marketing internship at a record label. And so that was kind of a completely different experience, working with creatives than just my typical day-to-day of who I knew and how we operated. And so there was this freedom that they had that I didn't necessarily know what to call it. At the time, you think they're a little aloof, or you just don't know what this vibe is and how they can wake up at 10 or or show up at 10 or work till 4 in the morning. Just very different from the life I was living. And I think that kind of triggered something in me to say, hey, there's different elements in life. There's different parts of maybe even yourself that you haven't explored yet. And so I started to pay attention to more of these creatives, and that kind of sparked, well, what does life after college look like for me? And that was a 2-year question. So eventually, about a year and a half after college, 2 years after college, I finally figured out, okay, let me try to move around. So just landed in a couple different places. I tried, I had family up north. So I kind of visited people, hung out with friends, still just exploring. I actually came out here with some friends for a Halloween party. And when we were out here, the energy kind of matched what these creative guys that I was interning for, it kind of matched what they were giving me. And so on the way back, I told my friends, I said, hey, I think I'm going to move to LA. And they were asking me, well, how are you going to do that? You don't have any money. I said, exactly. What a better time I have nothing to lose at this point, and I have nothing holding me back. So I packed up my car, Toyota Tercel 1994 stick shift, and drove across the country.
Wow.
Yeah, yep.
Wow. Tercel, I haven't heard that in a while. I'm trying to think, when's the last time I've seen one?
A green one. It's typically a green car.
Wow, so that was quite the adventure, huh, at that time?
It was.
To pack up and come to a new place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what happened for you once you got here?
Culture shock, because then, the first big step was getting out here, but then trying to kind of navigate, hey, what do you do once you're out here? Because now there's so many different avenues in which people are working in different industries, and people are acting or producing film, and then there's traditional 9 to 5s. And so I kind of got a little into sales and a little bit into marketing at first, and just did some contract work, to be honest, and kind of just helped out some people who had their own thing going on. And a Craigslist ad came up. So back in the day, it was Craigslist, if I could age myself. And that's when I applied for the job at law offices of Scott Warmuth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, and you were in marketing for I don't remember how long you stayed, but yeah, it was a great time period. Well, we had this little session here with Brandon. You were probably half of the team at that time. The two of you.
Yeah. This was and that's why I always say this is kind of like a special place for me, because this was. At the time, this was, I would say, a creative incubator, like they have for tech incubators. This was, Scott is not your typical lawyer, and then Brandon is not your typical video guy for law offices. And so just the things we were able to do and explore, that just kind of
that was a great time. Yeah, great time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, we ask each guest to bring an item of significance with them. What did you bring with you today?
So I brought my card game. So my card game is Like You, and it's just play for friends. It's a lighthearted card game, and it's a question game. Basically, there are no rules, but it allows you to say, hey, there's 2 questions on each card, and you can either ask a deeper question or a lighthearted question. And what it does is just open people up. It gives you the opportunity to learn about people in your community, in your family, friends, or at work. And so during the pandemic, I was in a space with friends where we were just kind of understanding that there's people who don't really communicate, right? Outside of work, and then not even work specifically, but just in our day-to-day, as we're more on social media, as we're more on our phones, at streaming, the level of conversations have just diminished. And so we were thinking, hey, what would be something simple that could be integrated into people's day-to-day lives that can help them with conversations, that can elevate them being social, and that could kind of build community. And so that's what we came out with the card game. And we didn't want it to be too deep, right? So we didn't want someone crying on your arm on the first time you have a conversation, but also we didn't want anything too crass for, or a game that just wasn't something simple where everybody would feel involved, right? So we just made sure we stayed in that middle lane of, hey, let's have conversations, and let's have it in a way where it's not intimidating, and also where you can answer the questions, right? And so we wanted to make it where you would be able to talk to people, and that was the goal.
I'm looking at the box, and this game, incidentally, I know it's available at Target because we've seen it at Target.
Yeah.
And where else is it sold? But I did want to mention something about it as well. But first, why don't you just people go online, they can buy it.
Yes.
It's called Like You.
Yep. So you can buy it at likeyoucards.com, LIKE, the letter U, cards.com. It's also available in Target. And the version that's available in Target is actually the extended pack, which is bigger than the one you see here.
Okay.
But I bought that one specifically because it just reminded me of like the significance of beginning. And again, so working here, like I said, I always thought of this as an incubator. When I was here, we had plans to do just some creative things. How do we get people to understand law without it seeming so burdensome? How do we educate the community so that they actually do get legal advice and take legal action when needed? Because it seems off-putting, right? Even if you get injured or you need legal services, some people just avoid those situations. But we wanted to make sure that we let everyone know that we were a place to come. And so a lot of changes happened at that time. People left. We were getting online. And so also I saw Scott open in Huntington Park, and then La Puente, and so it just kind of just became a place of building. And so always just looking at certain things that Scott did, it kind of lent toward my inspiration of, yo, it'd be cool. Like, what is my what does my law offices of Scott Warmuth look like, right? And so for me,
well, that's an
card game.
Interesting question, because that's what this card game is like, sort of like what is. I just wanted to read. I was caught by the just the real intriguing nature of the questions that are, I guess, on the cards, right? Mm-hmm. So, for instance, have you ever been caught in a love triangle? So that's like the basis. Or this one really was interesting. If you were arrested with no explanation, what would your friends and family assume you had done? It really does provoke interesting conversation and thought.
Yeah.
If peanut butter wasn't called peanut butter, what would you call it?
See?
Just a great starting point for conversation. And you could almost do like a podcast series,
yeah,
with each of these questions.
You know what? Yeah, we were talking
play
about
the game.
A new segment.
Yeah,
right. Brian, it sounds like you really value communication, and it seems like you also enjoy it, like to get to know people through communication. Is that accurate?
Very accurate. When you think about just the amount of people in the United States and how different they are, even if they look the same, like where do they come from? Are they first generation, second generation? And then also, well, how did they grow up? Some people look the same, grew up in poverty. Some people didn't. And then food, and then what type of sports do they like, and why do they like sports, and then why don't they like sports? There's so many different angles of people that fascinate me. And so communicating and trying to understand that is really, really important to me. And I think that, just in the last years, we've seen people become more separate. And so it's hard to hate people face to face, though. So if you can create conversations, you can really gain some understanding and then build back up those relationships. I mean, now we're at a place where we're seeing family members not even talk to each other based on their voting, right, or anything. And so just trying to kind of repair that fabric of, as cliche as it sounds, the U.S. of A. Like, right. How does that look when we all are here trying to do whatever we're trying to do, but in the midst of trying to do that, we still have to exist amongst each other. So
it sounds like there's a difference in your mind between, let's say, online communication over the phone or text and in person.
Yes. You can't read body language online, or you can hear it on the phone, but you can't see it, right? So if I text you, hey, how was your day? ! And you text back, cool. And I'm like, oh, like, are you upset or not? But if I was in your face, you're like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, tell me about it. Instead of me being worried, like, oh, did something happen and you're not telling me? Do I pry? It's just a difference that you can see, and nuance can be communicated in person. So I think that's important.
You think that's important? Do you feel like it's being lost?
It is. It's not a bad thing, but it's just it's a byproduct of evolution of technology, right? Certain things don't require a whole conversation. So yeah, it makes sense to put it in an email. Certain things don't require you to be face to face. So a phone call is fine, or a video conference. But in the midst of that, we've kind of integrated those tools so much into our lives that there's been some kind of mishaps and missteps as far as segmenting that stuff for how we communicate,
Mm-hmm. Those are great ideas. And are you working on anything now, let's say in follow-up to your card game, something that will help, address your concerns about what's happening, but something that you'll be, you might be creating now?
Yes. So two main goals of mine is and my team is kids. So if we get kids early, they can communicate often and well. That's when they learn languages and everything. And then also adults. And so we're trying to now do two things. One, get kids to communicate to adults, right? So that it kind of puts the adults, sparks that adult in the kid again, so that they can kind of trigger some of the, I guess, the luster that they may have lost. You just going through your day to day. If you drive an hour into work 9 hours a day, then drive an hour home, that's 11 hours. I don't expect you to have it after that, right? But if we can integrate communication via kids, that's one way we could kind of tear down those walls and build it back up. And then just getting kids to also get comfortable talking too is something we want to do, because there's so many things that are being put in front of them visibly. Like when you look at these cartoons and movies and things like that, they're just digesting. And so we also want to know what they think. So how do we create some output on the other side of that? And so that's what we're hoping to create with conversations on both sides. And then of course we're going to get into more adult conversations as well. But we're going to start our next two with the kids, and then kids to adults.
You say team. Are you working with the team?
Yes. So I have two partners. One is a poet, Michael, and then Kiara, she's an author. And so really being intentional about the team, right? So people who are really good at communication was what made this work so well, is people who understand words and people who understand presentation and when to invoke body language, as poets do in their performances. And so we've just kind of come together, and you have someone who writes in long form, you have someone who performs in front of people and does really good storytelling, and then you have me with my corporate and 9-to-5 background, just understanding some day-to-day things, right? Like blending those together is what kind of made the questions interesting. So we were even having a conversation about work wives, just side note, and they were like, well, what's that? And I'm like, hey, well, some people, they work so much together, it just kind of becomes this thing. And I didn't go down any like salacious lines or anything, but just the fraternization of the relationship of knowing somebody so much just because you're at work with them for 8 hours. And then just having how people are different at work than they are at home. And somebody may be the top boss at work, and they're getting yelled at home. So just kind of bringing all that type of stuff into our conversations to create questions that keep things interesting. And then that's how we kind of landed on, hey, what would it look like to kind of rejuvenate this person that you experience at work all the time? Well, kids, because that probably wouldn't land well coming from an adult at first. But if you get to them through their children, that'd be an interesting way to have that conversation. Plus, it would build rapport within the family. So
yeah,
Scott has always said to me that he would speak to his children like an adult, right? Like not
baby them, but talk to them, have a conversation that is a real conversation, and not baby language type of thing.
Yeah.
Even from age, from birth, kind of having a discussion with them. They may not even be able to respond, but
they get it. They get it.
Oh, they get it.
For sure.
Yeah. They start to learn fast before they can speak.
Absolutely. Kids are dynamic. And I think they're a great Trojan horse into good conversations.
Yeah.
My wife and I also speak to our children like that from a very young age, but beyond that, I would say they interact mostly, if not 90% with adults. They're the transmission of culture and language and food and art and all that is coming from an adult. And my wife and I believe like it's difficult for a 5-year-old to really learn something from a 5-year-old, other than, some sort of like behavior that they have, right? But we always get comments about how they speak. they're just sort of like taken back when they engage an adult at the grocery store. They're having this full-on conversation with them, and I'm only struck by it that they're recognizing that it's different. To us, we're like, this is how she is. But I guess a lot of kids are not getting that conversational experience at home, huh?
No. And I mean, you know, especially post-pandemic, a lot of the school is online. Even in person, it's on a laptop. So a lot of the learning has changed as well. But what happens when they go into the real world, right? Even now, a lot of people graduate, and you know, I was in sales for a while, and if you get that angry email, they're like, what do I say? You have to email them back. Mm-hmm. Well, how? Tell him we apologize for the lack of service, or the lapse in service, lapse in communication, et cetera, et cetera. This is how we'll fix it. Acknowledge our fault. Tell them what we're going to do to fix it. Give them a timeline of when it will be fixed. And well, then who do I get that from? I'm like, you have to go get the answers. So I have seen where you get these really smart human beings, and they have so much head knowledge, but it doesn't come out. It doesn't come out anymore. And they can't verbalize some of the things that are in their head. And then also when conflict comes their way, they can't communicate. And I think that's really important. And I think that's why we end up in these segments and sects of like, I'm just going to stay on this side, or I'm going to stay on this side, because if I don't know how to communicate, it's a lot easier to just say the same thing.
That is a communication problem, isn't it? Yeah.
The very first step in that process that you just mentioned right now was acknowledgement. And I think so many people have like really struggled with that, you know, like to just acknowledge the experience of someone else, or they go right away to maybe trying to blame them for something, or to give them an excuse, right? Which they all may be valid. And I speak to Scott about this, like the acknowledgement. When anybody's coming to you with a pain, a hurt, you know, that's so important. And almost like you can't go beyond what you need to go through until that acknowledgement happens. I certainly understand that that's a hard thing to do, but you know, so you have this emotional intelligence. Where did you get this from?
I would say I was a sponge. So it definitely started with having parents who weren't from the South and living in the South, because they had their way of communicating. People in the South had their way of communicating, and they didn't want me to have an accent. So they're like, "What are you talking? Stop, drop this. What is this? You sound like cattle cur. Herd cattle, and things like that." So it was always this switch of trying to understand multiple parties, and then going into the internship and seeing the creatives and their calm demeanor and the flexibility of what a timeline was, and understanding that for them it was the quality of the product. And where I come from, completion is perfection. Like, it has to be done. If it's not executed, then what are we doing? Versus someone who's, it has to be right. It has to be right. Let's develop it. And it may take an extra 2 months, but you know, once their product comes out and it's all over the place and it's making the money, completely different trains of thoughts. And then being in LA, and again, culture shock, multiple cultures, multiple people working various jobs that you wouldn't necessarily think about at the time. And all of that just kind of lent into, you got to understand people, and how do you communicate with them if you don't understand them. So then you actually have to listen differently, and then you have to retain the information and process it differently, versus just having the mindset of, oh, okay, I know what they're saying and I get it. It's like, no, you actually have to get it. and then you have to communicate based on you getting it. Mm-hmm. And what does that sound like versus your muscle of just spewing or responding. So it was definitely learned.
I'd be curious to be a fly on the wall with a conversation between you and the person who just can't wait to say what they have to say, and you know, like everything that you just said just wasn't heard, right? Like how do you respond to a person like that, you personally?
Me, I usually say, I can tell you're passionate about fill in the blank, whatever we're talking about. So why don't I hear you out, and then we can reset, and then I kind of just let them go, right? And then we can come to an agreement on what they said, and then we can talk from my point of view based on what they said, right? Because if not, then we're not going to really understand each other. If I don't acknowledge what they're saying, if I don't understand what they're saying, then somebody has to understand somebody else first, right? And that's kind of the like collaboration and tension. It's just like sales. If someone's like, "Oh, I can't afford it," how can you not afford it, right? It's this whole back and forth of what works and what doesn't work, but really we have to come to an agreement. So how do we get to that middle ground? It's just kind of just taking that extra time, because if not, you're going to do way more work on the back end. Yeah, communicating.
That's pretty wise and gentle, and also very strong. A strong, healthy communication position. Okay. Yeah. So, Brian, I think some of our listeners may be interested in the journey to get from a concept to an actual product in the store. I'd like to get into that, but let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
At Warmuth Law, they believe that just because you speak a foreign language, come from a different culture, or simply don't know how to navigate the legal system, that should not prevent you from compensation from injury or receiving benefits. Their multicultural staff have been helping SGVers like you for over 38 years. Visit law888.com or call them at 626-784-7017 and tell them you heard about them on this podcast.
We're back with Brian Taylor. Brian, before the break, I was mentioning to you that the listeners would probably be interested, and I'm also interested in the process from concept to something tangible and on the shelf. Like how did that whole process work?
Yeah, it starts with a vision, and I had really good examples of how to go from concept to production. Like I said, based on being a sponge. So one example is, and I'm going to use a real example, but so when Scott opened up the law office in Huntington Park, there were plans made. We went site visits, had to find people that spoke the language, had to figure out the furniture, the cost of the building, all these things and these layers. And he did that twice. And so that same thing kind of came back to me when we went to creating this card game. It's like, okay, hey, let's lay it out on paper. All right, this is what it looks like. How many questions are we going to have? What does it look like? Is it going to be a huge card, or are we going to do something handheld? Because we want people to be able to travel with this, so it can't be too big. And you don't want to be, the weirdo walking around with a box, right? So it needs to be able to fit in a purse, a pocket, left in a car, things like that. So then once we had that vision, we can back into it and say, okay, colors and all these type of things. And once you get a visual of what that looks like, the next step is, okay, now that we have everything together, how do we get it made? And then you go into looking for people to make your stuff. And so card games are printers and manufacturers. And so you have to find people who have the type of product that you want and that can create the products that you need. So some people use certain card stocks and certain qualities of paper, and you have to decide all these type of things and what the feel you want it to look like. And all of that also plays into how you want it to be presented, right? Do you want it to be presented as something super fancy, or you want it to be presented as something that's just simple, can be integrated, could be left on the table, and people, hey, what's that? So all of that plays into the type of quality you choose and working with the type of manufacturer and producer that can bring your vision to life. And so that is the hard part, but the easy part, right? Because once you have any product, you have to sell it. So that's when communication comes back again. So you had to communicate to create it, and you had to communicate to get the person who's going to produce it to make it the way you want it. So then now you have to communicate to the people who need to buy it, why they should buy it or what it does for people. And so from there, it's it's just like anything else with products, it's selling. So again, just like we did at the law firm, emails, Facebook, just telling people about the products, telling people who don't like the products that you have, but may know people in those categories or those spaces that may be interested. So really understanding the type of person you're talking to and the type of conversation you need to frame around that was very important, because if I send something to a person who only works with beauty, then oh, okay, cool, thanks, I'll check it out. But they can't help you any further than supporting you with a purchase, right? But they can't put you in a store or do different things like that. So you really have to understand, if you're communicating with this person, that they're not the person that gets the job done that you need, but you need to also point the conversation in a direction where they can carry it on further. So just a lot of that, a lot of back and forth, getting answers from people, communicating, understanding resources and who supports what. And then that's when you kind of finally get to the right context and the people that you need to talk to in those spaces. And then you kind of paint the vision again. Then you go back to your first point of communication of when you created the game and why you created the game. And now you're having that conversation all over again and what you think it'll do for people. So it's like a circular economy almost, but you really have to have all those different types of presentations, so to speak, in your head, because you're going to talk to various people along the way that do different things for your product or for your service, and you need to be able to communicate to them in the way that they need to hear it, not the way you want to talk about it, right? And so that's why you see celebrities and influencers with products versus the guy who created it, because he may geek out on, oh, do you see this battery I put back here and how it lays against this? They may really talk about the science of it versus the value that it brings you. And so you have to understand the value that it brings that particular person when you're communicating. And that is the most important part as far as really getting the products done. You can always find somebody to build it out, or whether it's a t-shirt, a card game, whatever, you can always find somebody to create it for you. But when you need to place it somewhere, you really have to change your communication to cater to the audience.
Is there a single memorable or most memorable moment for you in this journey?
I would say the beginning. Putting together the questions, putting together the colors. That was really probably the most memorable part.
That was the most creative
and
time.
It was the most creative and also the most freeing too, because again, just leaning on past experiences. So right, like at the law office, there were always different colors and various types of artwork and stuff like that. So really just understanding that colors can create an energy, or it can communicate things to people. It can put them in a different frame of mind. That is really what was the difference for us versus just having, hey, one color on this box, or just a melting pot, which is what we wanted to create it for people and for conversations. And so that's how we got to that point.
Awesome. Well, Brian, it's not often that we get someone who wasn't raised here in the San Gabriel Valley or even California who gets to do this part of our program. But I'm going to be very fascinated to see what you get into for your favorite things in the San Gabriel Valley.
Yeah, it'll be real interesting. I'm real excited to hear what you think are your three favorite, your SGV3.
Yeah. I have do I say it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so the racetrack.
Santa Anita Racetrack.
Santa Anita Racetrack. Have you ever been to, there's a bar called The Station.
I don't know that.
I don't. So what is the station?
I think it's a cop bar, but it's like it's just a really cool hole in the wall.
Does it have
saloon doors?
I think I've seen it.
Yeah.
It's by the racetrack.
Across from Burlington Coat Factory, right? Going down
that's Baldwin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, well, my other favorite is the golf course, Alhambra Golf Course, the driving range.
Alhambra Golf Course.
Almanzor.
Yeah.
Almanzor Park.
Yep. I just like the driving range.
Are you a golfer?
No, but I would literally go out there sometimes after work, and I would just hit some balls. But they were just always these older guys that just seemed so peaceful. You know what I mean? And,
maybe doing Tai Chi or something.
Yeah. And so it was just like, yo, man, this is where I want to get to, and where you can just keep your own pace. Like, what do I have to do to get in life to get to a place where I can control the pace of, you know what I mean? Like, there's traffic, like there's bumper to bumper traffic, and they're just over here just chilling. And I'm like, this is where I want to be at in life. And so that was always very interesting. I actually took Brandon over there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think Brandon identified on his SGV3 Almanzor Park.
Yeah, I told him.
He used to go to go walk
That's
there.
what I told him.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, you got to come. Like, this is the most peaceful place. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, are those all? No, the racetrack has been named before. I think.
Racetrack has been named. Even Almanzor Park has been named.
Yes, not the driving range though. I don't think.
Yeah, not specifically that. And then
the station is also new.
Yeah, that's new. Yeah,
the station is it's a really, and they're open. They open at like 6 a.m. sometimes during I don't know with the it's not the soccer playoffs.
Oh, the World Cup.
World Cup.
Yeah, World Cup.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, can you share once again with our listeners, where can they find your product? Where are you online, social media, all that stuff?
Yes, so you can find us at Like You Cards, LIKE, letter U, Cards, CARDS. That's online, Instagram, Facebook, also likeyoucards.com, and you can also find us in Target.
Awesome. Can we have this?
Absolutely.
Because we could actually use this for the show. So we may actually integrate a segment. We'll see how it works, but it sounds like it would be very interesting just from those few questions.
Yeah. We were trying to think of some way to
a new segment.
Bring a new. Yeah.
So that would be pretty cool for you too, I think. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing your story with us and our listeners. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. There's another episode for you. Thank you for tuning in. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. And if you are a regular listener, stay tuned next time for another guest. And as always, email us info@sgvmasterkey.com. And you can find our full back catalog at www.sgvmasterkey.com. And until next week, we'll see you then.
We love the San Gabriel Valley. There are some amazing people and businesses here, and we think they deserve the spotlight. Welcome to the SGV Master Key Podcast. We'll have on the people that make the SGV great. We'll find out what makes them tick, their ups and downs, their history, and we're going to have fun doing it. This is the SGV Master Key Podcast. And now your hosts, Scott Warmuth and Russell Mano.